Yeah, the Siberian Huskies are quite a bit different than the Alaskan Huskies nowadays. Back in the day, they were a lot closer genetically. Siberians did have a day and age where they were top dog, and now the Alaskans have really taken over the distance racing world. We've bred for endurance, recovery time, appetite, attitude, um, the build of the dog. We really have kind of gone towards these kind of leaner, tall, long-legged, really marathon runner looking dogs.
Hello, folks. I'm here with Hunter Keefe. Why don't you introduce yourself and what you do?
My name's Hunter Keefe. I'm a dog musher here in Alaska. I was born and raised in Michigan, but I've been up in Kinnick, Alaska for quite a few years now. I've been up here since 2018.
And to get through the elephant in the room, how are George, Paul, John, and Ringo doing?
Those boys are perfect. My Beatles are racing with me. They did the Kinnick 200 with me. I just did the Copper Basin race this past weekend, and I took a younger group of dogs. So the Beatles stayed at home, but they're planning to run the Cusco with me this next weekend. So they're all primed and ready to go and excited to be taking my race team out again.
And chocolate chip?
So Chocolate Chip, he's on the puppy team, so he just did the Copper Basin. His siblings Peanut Butter and Snickerdoodle also finished the race with me. So that was their first big race. They've been doing little races this year, the Kinnick 100 and 200, but they just completed their first 300-mile race, which is really exciting for dogs that are under 2 years old.
So, what is that balance between using known dogs and raising dogs up for the next generation, so to speak?
Yeah, this is kind of my first race. I've actually taken a bunch of younger ones for the past couple of years here at Ramey's Kennel. It's been, just race the best dogs that are here and try to do the best we can. But this race, we were helping a friend qualify, and I wanted to leave my race dogs for the big race coming up, the Cusco. I've got a lot of time and energy into that, so I thought it would be really good to kind of develop the future and bring some younger dogs and let them get to go around a race course because that's only going to help them in the future. And the more experience they have under their belts, the better. So
And
it's good to take it a little more rest.
some of that may go back to science, which is what do you wish you might have learned in science class, whether it comes to nutrition for dogs or raising them or things like that that could have just been part of an actual biology or life science course.
Yeah, I love anatomy was one of my favorite classes. So even knowing more of the anatomy of dogs and just knowing all the little things that go into it, muscle structure would have been good. Just learning the skeletal as well. As far as any little injuries or things that might come up, it's nice to know what you're looking at. Nutrition is also huge. There's so much science that's gone into just sled dogs because of Iditarod and the way their metabolism works. Understanding that is pretty crucial, and getting to know all that would be awesome. And then the science of the terrain geology is cool. Knowing what you're mushing through. Alaska is beautiful, and there's all different kinds of terrain, so to kind of understand the landscape is nice as well.
Do
Even the
you look at
wildlife.
like topographic maps at all?
Not really. I kind of have an understanding of, what my race course is going to be. I used to look at maps in class and stuff, but I haven't checked them out as much. Um, Copper Basin's a pretty hilly one. It's got some, rough terrain towards the beginning, but then it flattens out. If I was going to do the Yukon Quest races, I might be checking that out a little bit more thoroughly, though, because there are quite a few climbs in there, and I'd like to know what I'm going into beforehand.
So shifting over from science to math, is math more important for the long races or the short races?
I'd say the shorter races, because the time differentials and the rest is all going to be, kind of on you to calculate a little bit. In a shorter race, you have a mandatory rest requirement. So Cusco 300 will be 10 hours. The Copper Basin was 18 hours, and it's broken up in your different checkpoints. So you have to decide how you want to rest for how much and how long. And then it's broken up differently as well. Like Copper Basin is half-hour increments, so you have to do it within half-hour increments. If you do 29 minutes, you have 0 minutes of rest. If you do 45, you only have half an hour. So it's important to be on your math there. And then Iditarod, it's a lot more. You just kind of do what you want. You don't really have to sign out unless you're on one of your mandatory breaks. So it's it's a little bit less important, but it's important that when you're setting your alarm, you're setting it correctly, only giving yourself the amount of sleep you want to get out on time. And when you're doing your drop bags and the logistics of things, it's important to have the right amount of stuff at the right places. And that is a lot of math and a lot of work there.
When you set your alarms, is it more about you being ready? Like, are the dogs ready to go as soon as you tell them to, or do you have to build that into the time as well?
I have to booty them, and I like to walk mine around before. And depending on how long I'm resting, maybe I'm going to try to give them another meal or another snack. So that'll be a little bit more time. I like to give myself plenty of time where I don't feel stressed. Um, if it came down to it, I can booty pretty quickly and get ready probably within 15, 20 minutes. But I like to give myself a lot more time. I like to be out there like an hour or two before. I like to have plenty of time to pack my sled, look at things, think about the run ahead. But I like to try to get an hour or 90 minutes of sleep when I can. I feel like that's a good amount of sleep for me.
And then shifting over to social studies and history, how have you embraced kind of this culture, and what is the culture and the story behind Iditarod?
Yeah, I grew up watching the race, fascinated with it. Like the little Iditarod documentaries every year, and I had books all about Iditarod and mushing, and just trying to understand the sport. So Joe Reddington starting the race to save the sled dogs is a pretty incredible story, and the fact that we still have sled dogs today is really due to his love of the dogs. So getting to hear about that, but there's so much more that I didn't know that I learned when I got up here that would be interesting to have learned about. And the CRM run is a great story as well, even if it doesn't quite have to do completely with Iditarod. It does share quite a lot of the same trail, and they were still mushing to Nome for different purposes. But it's another great story about Alaska and the sled dogs and how tough these dogs really are.
Well, going back to sled dogs in general and going back to biology, I was amazed looking at them. They did not look like the huskies I thought I would see, and I think that goes through breeding for, the various characteristics. I mean, maybe you can explain a little bit more why they don't look like the Washington
Yeah,
Husky.
yeah, the Siberian Huskies are quite a bit different than the Alaskan Huskies nowadays. Back in the day, they were a lot closer genetically. Siberians did have a day and age where they were top dog, and now the Alaskans have really taken over the distance racing world. We've bred for endurance, recovery time, appetite, attitude, the build of the dog. We really have kind of gone towards these kind of leaner, tall, long-legged, really marathon runner looking dogs. Some of the Siberians nowadays have kind of been bred more for looks, so they have really fluffy coats, but their legs are pretty short, and it's hard for them to keep up with the Alaskans who have to take half as many steps to travel to the same distance. But their attitudes are different too. Siberians are a little harder headed at times, and the Alaskans, we've just bred this incredible drive into the dogs where they just want to run. So we don't have to ask much out of them. They just have this drive to do it themselves.
And then I guess to go to the last subject, which would be language arts or, English, what do you wish you would have learned in English class about, I don't know, whether it's communication or writing or reading or whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, just the reading aspect would have been interesting to read more books and stuff, but definitely when you go to these race banquets and stuff, it's nice to have a nice speech. I like to come up with mine typically on the trail. I'll be thinking of them in my head and kind of jot down notes. And then after the race, I kind of compile my thoughts together and try to write up something that's nice. It's nice to feel like your grammar is on point, which sometimes I don't think mine is. So I'll use, an app like Grammarly or something to help me out. But it's important to have your thoughts together and sound really professional and thank all the right people when you get to a finish line because it's not just you who got yourself there.
Well, thanks so much for your time, Hunter. Once again, I hope you're able to share all the links you have so we can support you. And if you're still raising funds for the Iditarod, we'd like to share that as well. But really enjoyed you showing us around last summer, and thanks so much for taking your time right now.
Yeah, awesome. It's finally to good to get with you here, and I have a website that's up and running now really well. hunterkeefe.com. On Instagram, I'm at Mushing Dogs. I feel like I post there semi often. Facebook is kind of the main hub for dog mushers, and I'm Hunter Keefe on Facebook. I've got like a sports page, I think, and then I've got like my personal page too. I try to kind of share everything that goes on my personal page on the other page as well. We're doing a little bit of fundraising right now for Iditarod through GoFundMe, and those links are easy to find on Facebook, really.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. And